19 meeting, budget hearings to order. The date is November 12th. It is 2 p.m. The machine is open for roll call. The record reflect that all 9 council members are present, the parish president and parish attorney and his directors are present. Mr. President, you want to open with any statements? All right, Mr. Serpez.
Yes, you want to, yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. As required by law, we have a proposed balanced budget. The estimated revenues exceed the total proposed expenditures. In order to meet this demand, this budget includes non-recurring grant and settlement revenues totaling $9,700,000. $4 million of that is Economic Development Administration grant for our raw water intake project. $1.2 million settlements of oil and gas concursive cases, and the $4.5 million the BP settlement revenues for 2020. This budget proposes oil and gas revenues based at $59 a barrel and at $2.55 per MCF of gas. It also includes a significant decrease to the original requested expenditures such as complete elimination of the mosquito control department, significant reduction in personal services, operating services, and capital outlay items of numerous other departments, no funding for several community service grants, significant budget reduction in personal services, operating services, and capital outlay were required in the firefighting and ambulance departments. Even with these expenditure reductions, the firefighting fund required an operating transfer of $1.5 million from the general fund. The council and administration must develop a plan to address these deficiencies within the firefighting fund to eliminate further general fund transfers. With the increases in expenditures and decreases in revenues over the past years, providing the necessary services has become increasingly difficult. In the past years, the council has used available fund balances to cover these deficiencies. I urge the council to use caution when considering reducing fund balances, since the council could limit our ability to respond to unforeseen disasters, major repairs, and to provide basic services. The council administration must work together to establish a short-term and long-term goals for revenue generation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. We're going to start off with fund balance summaries. You have a presentation on fund balance summaries and designations?
Yes, sir. If you, what I'll do, I kind of go through and tell you, how we could do all this.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I'm going to bring up the book on the screen, and as we go along, I'll bring it up on the screen so I can kind of point to where we are, in case y'all need to see it or if the audience needs to see it. And we'll just go along that way. We'll try to follow the agenda. I know there's a few people that wanted to give a presentation, and so if they come along and you want to give them that opportunity, we can stop anytime you want.
Yeah, I think once we go through the fund balance summaries, designations, and then we hear an overview of the oil and gas royalties as normal, we'll move into grants.
Okay.
I think all the grants, Mr. President, if I'm correct, were stripped.
Right.
So I guess we'll give the council the opportunity at that time to either keep it as such or a refund, if that's fine.
We have amendments for quite a few of these things too. I mean,
Okay.
we just draw them up. So, I mean, if y'all want to vote for them at that time, or if y'all just want to keep them till the end like we usually do.
Yeah, let's tally them at the end. Just keep a tally. That way,
Okay. Yes, I'll do that. I have a
right.
report that does.
all right, the floor is yours on the balance summaries and designations.
Okay, fund balance summaries. If you turn to the first white tab, summary by year, fund balance. What we did was, the reports that you had in the book before, We gave you 2 updated reports, a white one and a yellow one, which includes all the stuff we did since we gave you this book. All the stuff we did at the council meetings, the amendments we made at the council meetings are included on these new reports. So this gives you an updated report. The numbers, the revenues expense numbers have not changed for 2020, just the beginning balance from 2019. If you look at the revenues expenses for 2020 proposed budget, revenues at 39,274,920, expenditures at 39,218,130, for a difference of 56,790 just for the general fund. This what is the balanced budget. We balanced revenues over expenditures by $56,000. If we go look at the total for all funds, revenues is $74,191,000, expenditures is $73,347,000, total of $843,000 over. I'm not going to reflect on every one of these funds because most of these funds don't really affect anything, all the capital project funds. We're going to talk about general fund and we'll talk about the firefighting fund to start off with. And if there's any others y'all want to talk about, just stop me and we'll jump to those. The general fund, yes, sir?
Give us the page that you were on, so it shows the 71 million.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It was page 5 of those white pages.
Hey, council members, just for the record, I'm going to go ahead and turn everybody's mics on, so just be aware that your mic's going to be hot. So just go ahead, be cautious of any other conversations. All mics are hot.
You see it? You see that? Okay. So if we flip back to page 1, go back to general fund. What we'll do now is we can discuss the fund balance designations. If you go down to the second half of the report on the general fund, you'll see the designations. Starts with infrastructure, $76,000. At this point, I'd like to switch over to the fund balance designation tab, which is the pink tab. It says fund balance designations, and I can kind of give you an overview of how we got to where we are. First one should be a white page, infrastructure. Now we'll bring it up on the screen also. This year, for 2020, everybody got to that page? This year, for 2020, we're proposing no increases to infrastructure. I get with the permit department, and they tell me if there's any, they expecting any new subdivisions to pay this impact fee for that year, and she said she didn't have any this year. So I don't know if it's, if she's expecting some, but she's not sure they're going to be finished in 2020 or not, but she gave me no numbers for that day. So for 2020, so the number stays the same, 76,000.
You're on. Everybody's on already.
So the subdivisions that are under construction now that have been phasing in, so they didn't have to pay the impact fees up front all at once. Does she have any of those that are on the queue that are going to be paying?
She didn't give me any numbers for 2020.
Is it Mitra talking about?
Mitra, yeah.
Yeah, so what I know is that the 120 that we approved for Cypress, the impact fees were paid for that. I have a resolution for introduction on Thursday that has 36 in the parks, which I think that there'll be impact fees associated with those 36.
All right.
They were approved already, but this resolution then activates the impact fee. So we may have, I guess to answer your question, we may have revenue from those 36. Now, the 19 on Woodland Highway, I think they paid those already because that's up for final review. So those should have been paid as well, 19.
If you look up if you look in 2019 current budget, you can see,
I think it's, but answer the question, at least in my district, Mr. Russo, I believe that there's only probably 30 to 36 that we may receive impact fees from in 2020. So that may be the 76,000.
Yeah, and I don't see any others for 19 that have been paid for across the street. No, not the 20. He said the 120's already been paid.
Yeah, that's already been paid. You talking about the Hero property?
Well, I'm looking in here for where it is, and I don't see Cypress Park in here. And that was 124.
But I see, we had Planners Estates, and Parks and Plaquemines Phase 1D for 62,000. And then Parks and Plaquemines Phase 1A for 108, and that's what we received in 2019.
Correct. So the Cypress Park that was just mentioned, I don't see that revenue in here. I don't see the 19 across the street in here.
Well,
I
maybe
know that was paid because that's the ordinance that we did that then transferred the impact fees to the 406 project. So maybe it's under the 406 project? That's not where they have realignment, LA 406 project?
I see they're using different titles for the Parks subdivision, so that was probably the initial Parks, and then I see they're using the word Parks of Plaquemine, so it may be that while it's called Cypress, the ownership, that might have something to do
Yeah,
with it.
they did, I don't know, they didn't rename it like twice or three times.
I mean, I usually just put the name down that's on the ordinance, or on the check. But these are budgeted. That's not saying that this is going to be the only thing we receive in 2019. We may get more before the end of the year.
No, but I don't even see what we say is received, as showing been received.
I'll call Amitra.
Go ahead, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, if you find out anything about that, we'll let y'all know. The next one is emergencies. The blue page. We end, currently, you'll see, when you look at 2019, that's the current budget as of right now, for 2019. So when I give you the fund balance reports in 2019, that's the number that's on there. We're not showing any changes. We're not proposing any changes for 2020. So it carries the same number over for, into 2020. 3,193,000. Any questions with this one?
My only question is, we find out how much we spent on the last emergency to see how much of this is going to be used and how much of it's going to be reimbursed?
You have the numbers?
I don't have all of them. I've just got a couple of invoices that we just paid. The one for, but I don't know what the totals are.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Mr. Dugas is here, he can bring us up to speed on that, but I don't have the total numbers. I know, isn't Ken supposed to be here?
Let me say this. Are we going to be better prepared for these type of questions on tomorrow? Because I'll just pass over all of my questions today and ask them tomorrow, because I don't want to bog down the hearing.
We don't have an accurate number. We'll get you an accurate number.
We can come back to that. So we're budgeting the same amount for 2020 that we did in 2029, 3,193,000. And of course, in 2019, we have an ordinance. You'll hear me say this quite a few times. We have an ordinance at the last council meeting in December, which is like a blanket ordinance. We're going to have to cover some things where some departments went over and things like that. And we'll also have to cover the our share of whatever the costs are for Hurricane Barry, which what I understand is 75-25 right now, so 25% of the total will be our share. Next thing I have is self-insurance. This is something that carries the same number every year. This is basically to designate funds for the payment of future insurance claims as required by insurance providers. So this designation just carried over from year to year. Next one is bond indebtedness, should be the green page. You can see our current budget right now in bond indebtedness is $8,763,293. And we're basically carrying the same amount for next year. This is for 1 year's bond payment. And this is the 2020 bond payment. If we add them up, that's how much our bond payment should be for 2020. 8,763,000. Basically what happened, we get the numbers every year from Scott Elston that tells us how much to put in over $19 a barrel, which was 4,455,000. And because if we leave that money in bond indebtedness, it'll create a negative in our unreserved and designated. We transfer those funds back to the unreserved and designated. So basically what you're doing, you're putting the money in, you're taking it right back out. Any questions there?
Just my last one.
Yeah.
The refunding effort that we're going through right now,
Yes.
does that reflect any savings on the bond payment in this budget?
No, it's not because we don't have final numbers yet. But it will reflect, there will be savings of approximately $300,000 a year. That's the number, that's the information I got from the bond attorneys. I spoke to them last week.
The reason I ask that is because if we're going to cobble up money to pay for mosquito control and all, 300,000 would go a long way towards helping.
If I had the real numbers, I would, but until they actually sell these bonds and stuff, they're not going to have the final numbers on this. I think there's an ordinance at Thursday's meeting, a resolution at Thursday's meeting that you're going to vote on to tell them to go forward with it. And they'll have more information at that time, but I don't think they'll have any final numbers. Because I did ask them that.
I mean, the whole budget's based on anticipated revenue anyway, so it's not like we can't anticipate the bond savings of $300,000 or whatever you think is,
I mean, we could. I mean, we could put something in there, and, I could stick it in a line item somewhere. But he said around 300,000. All right, the next thing, BP settlement fund. As Mr. Lapine brought up earlier, we had a settlement revenue of $4 million, a grant revenue for the Belle Chase wastewater treatment plant of $4 million. It was an amount of $4 million. Basically, what we did was, this grant, we put in the Waterworks Fund. Since we originally took the money out of the BP fund to fund this project, we just shifted the funding to the Waterworks Fund, put the grant in the Waterworks Fund, and put the money back into BP, into the BP settlement of $4 million. Now, we were roughly, $6 million short? We had a $6 million shortfall. We took this $4 million to help us balance the budget. This is one-time money, a one-time grant. So there you can see, I mean, when I gave you our presentations earlier this year, I told y'all we were going to be short, and we were. But this money, we didn't expect this grant to come in this year. So it did. We put the money back into BP, but we took it right back out and put it back to the unreserved and designated to help us balance the budget. So you can see the settlement revenues of $4.5 million for 2020, which we expect in 2020, and we'll get it one more time in 2021. The grant, $4 million, we put into BP, and we're taking out $8.2 million, putting back to the unreserved and designated. So the amount did increase from $3.7 million for 2019, which is your current budget, to $4.013 million for 2020, which is roughly $300,000 increase. Any questions on that one? I know it's kind of confusing, but
Well, so Tommy, and Benny brought it up to me earlier. What is the total amount of one-time money that's in our budget for 2020?
it's around 9.2. It's the $4 million for the grant. It's 1.2 million in concursus cases, which is the oil and gas cases. Settlements, that's, Rennie may be able to go a little further if you need any details on that. And also the 4.5 million for BP,
9.7.
9.7 million.
9.7. So in 2021,
2021, you'll still have the BP money
$10 million?
for the last year. But the 4 million and the 1.2, you will not. Okay, the next one it's FEMA projects. This is one we've been carrying over from year to year, so, we'll have some money that's there when we finally close out these FEMA projects. And it's just $1 million, probably won't be enough money, but at least it's something to get us started. The next one is just the FEMA revenue. I mean, it looks like a big number, but it's really, it's just numbers that helps us balance. It's for the revenues that exceeds the expenditures that we put in the budget. This just covers that. This is something that's going to change every year, and it's something that it's a funding thing. It's not money you can use. So basically, if you want to, we talked about some of these grants. If you want to put it back from the fund balances, you can use it from infrastructure, which is 76,000, emergencies, which is 3,000,000, bond indebtedness of 8,000,007, or the BP of 4,013,000.
Mr. Russo, to answer your question from earlier, the 108,000, which is listed as Parks of Plaquemine Phase 1A, was for Cypress Park. That's the money that was then appropriated for the LA 406 project.
But they did 120 lots?
I don't know the total lots. I just know that the 108 is from Cypress.
The reason I ask that is because I think the impact fee is 1,000 per lot. So when I look for impact fees per subdivision with 124 lots, I look for 124,000. And if we're changing names and we're not adding up the revenue correctly, it doesn't really indicate, the proper payment.
We'll verify.
Okay, if we go back to the fund balance report, I brought it up here. We went through all the fund balance designations that are in the general fund. If you go back to the fund balance, the white tab, first page, you see that an unreserved, undesignated proposed for this budget. If we voted on this thing exactly the way it is, made no changes, the unreserved, undesignated would be $175,000. We've been keeping it around $500,000. So I think this is something you'd want to try to increase also, before the end. But it'd just be moving money around. But I mean, so that's basically our fund balances, where we stand. The next thing I had on the agenda is the oil and gas royalties. I can ask Scott Elston to come up and give you a presentation on oil and gas. If you turn to page, let's see, supplemental information, the orange tab. It'll be the gray page.
Thank you, Tom.
Let me catch up and bring it up on the screen. All right, this budget for 2020 is proposed at $59 a barrel, $2.55 MCF. Even though we went up on the price by $2, you can see the total. If you look at the 2019 revised budget of $12,419,000, the total oil and gas royalties with 10% royalties now actually went down $200,000.
It's tough for you here when you're on the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. The total oil and gas royalties actually went down $200,000, even with us going up on the price of $2 a barrel.
Because of lack of production.
Lack of production.
Right.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott, and he can,
Do you have that chart? Do you have that chart you can pop up?
which one, the oil and gas charge? Yeah, I can.
You did. Okay. All right. Tommy was mentioning, I'm proposing a $59 barrel oil for 2020 for the Paris budget and $2.55 gas per MCF for 2020. There are two sources that I like to check before I come here and talk to the Department of Natural Resources with the state and then the EIA information which is the Energy Information Administration, which is the national numbers. And the Louisiana fiscal 2020 is running their budget for 2020 at 59.15, so it's very close to what we're proposing. Their fiscal year break isn't exactly the same, but it's probably for the remaining 7 months of 2020. So they'll probably keep that. They're supposed to have a meeting before the end of the year to possibly maybe change that a little bit, but they weren't sure if they were going to have the meeting or not. I don't know if that's the Revenue Estimating Committee in Baton Rouge. I think they said they were going to wait till after the election or something, but I don't see them changing that number drastically. EIA, which is the Energy Information, they're proposing a $57 oil for the first half of the year, and going back up to 62 for the second half of 2020. So the 59 that's proposed here is basically right in the middle of that as well. And today, the oil price, Louisiana Light, which is what the quality of oil here in the parish is $61.61, the price of oil today for the Louisiana Sweet. I don't know if you can see the chart up here. You can see that the production has really gone down. There's been a lot fewer operators. They've kind of depleted those are like the 2 or 3 operators that have 2 or 3 wells that are producing. They've kind of finished out producing. That's why you see the different colors, the early half of the on the chart that you can see here. So the remaining, the big producer here, the big operator here is Hillcore, and they've absorbed they've bought out a lot of the companies, and they have the main production here in the parish. Unfortunately, their production is also declining, as you can see in the blue ocean on the chart there. That's all Hillcore, and it seems like they're not really doing a lot of activity. They're just kind of depleting what they're producing. And they are doing some recompletions that come along during the year, but I don't see any drilling activity that they're doing. But probably they're not seeing that these properties are their core properties anymore. And maybe the best thing that they could do is probably sell these properties and get an aggressive company to come in there and build back up the production again. But I'm trying to get that information from them. It's not easy to get through in their, engineers to talk about these fields and seeing what their operations are. They kind of don't tell you a lot of information there. And if I do find out, I'll be sure to pass it along to the council. But the production is kind of dropping with these mature fields that they're producing from. It's mostly the West Bay, South Pass 24, and the Main Pass fields out there that are producing from the Hillcore properties.
Are you able to obtain any information on what the actual reserves are below what they've drilled?
They're pretty. It's hard for me to get a reserve number from. I can always ask, but they kind of don't like to share that information with what their remaining reserves are on the books. It's kind of a secret number that they kind of hide.
No, but from the Geological Association, who did all of the faulting maps, can you obtain any information from them?
Yeah, I can put it. What I could do is separate the fields with Hillcore and show you a production decline of, and that'll give you a good number if you extend that decline into an uneconomic point. You can kind of calculate I could kind of calculate reserves from the existing wells that are producing now. But I don't know any, once that's depleted, they'll move uphole and recomplete in another zone, and that's not going to be accounted for. But if I get to the right person, I could maybe get that information.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if there are reserves that are not being drilled, and perhaps we can cancel some leases for lack of production. If we want to redo these fields, we have to be aggressive on the leaseholders who are not producing.
Right. I agree with that.
And
Yeah.
so my point is, if we can get the information and LV Cooley can coordinate with you, and if the administration would work with the legal department to try to push some of this, perhaps we can put some of these fields back into development.
I know, I was told that, I know that all the fields inland are shallow water wells, and the original owner of the leases never sold the deeper drilling. So they still own the lease for the drilling deep in.
The deep rights of the,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I was thinking maybe if we could go get the state to do a program where each lease, you could drill a well tax-free and maybe get more drilling done that way.
That's possible. I mean, that would be an incentive for somebody to do something like, yeah, for an operator to go in there and drill a couple of wells.
We got to get the people who own the deeper rights to either sell them or give them up.
Right, but as long as they're holding it by production, they're not going to give them up.
Right.
However, if we can get them for non-production and cancel some leases, then we can re-advertise, and especially if we know the reserves.
Yeah.
So
That's
we
what
need to
the-
manage the leases, I think, in a better form.
The state does that as well. The state leases that aren't active, they will pursue, saying they tell you to release this acreage, and that they want it to be re-released.
And I bring that up because when I was at DNR, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see us do it at the local level.
Well, I could get with, LV and try to, look at some areas where there's inactivity, and, yeah, it's, some of the companies, they'll just pay their lease fee and they won't do any activity at all, so. The other thing, if you all were going to maybe think about changing the dollar amount, I just wanted to tell you that a dollar up or down would calculate to about $81,000 difference in the oil price. I mean, in the income. Yeah, it's about 80,000.
Tommy, I have a question. What do you project currently when you produce the book, the actual revenues year-to-date, 3.7 million? That's a $2.2 million deficit from a difference from what we projected on the original budget in 2019.
Oh, you-
What is your projection?
You talking about the actuals for
Yeah,
2019? Oh, yeah. The actuals you see here, that's just based on at time.
Yeah, right, so I mean, what are you projecting?
I think we're going to be really close to the 12 million for. What's happening is the 10% royalties are up quite a bit, even though the parish royalties are down. So I think we're going to be fine with the number. I'm thinking right around 12 million for, 12 million 5.
Okay,
So I'm not going to ask y'all to make any changes to that, because even though our parish royalties are down, the 10% royalties are up. The 10% royalties, they go more or less with the price. When the price goes up, then we see more of an increase in the price because it's all state fields. But the parish royalties are not doing that. So I'd feel comfortable with the number we have for 2019. Any other questions on oil and gas?
so basically, folks, what we do at this time is we make a decision on whether or not to take the consultant's advice and keep the budget, oil and gas prices at 59 as he suggested, or we modify it based on the presentation. If there's any objection to keeping it at 59 as it's stated in the book, go ahead and cue in and we'll have that discussion. Otherwise, we'll move on. Any objection to keeping it at 59? All right, well, Mr. Blank.
Do you think we should be a little bit more conservative?
I mean, typically in the past we have. I think the math works out to pretty much be the same. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with the 59. I know we had a lot of debate on it last year to go down to 57, and I think that's the number we landed on. It was perfect.
We started at 79 though, so that was the problem.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I mean, this council, made a good assessment of the situation, went down to 59, I think we hit that number spot on,
I think so.
you know.
Lately, it's been in
I
the
think,
60s,
You
right?
know, if we have no major changes, I think we're going to end up in the same, you know, with this, around the same number as we had this year. I don't think you're being, you know, overzealous by, you know, doing $59 a barrel.
Okay.
Because you're actually decreasing the amount of revenues.
Right, and that's the thing people didn't understand. I mean, although it's 62 today, it could be 100 tomorrow, it doesn't really matter if the production goes down, and that's really the equation you have to take is the amount of production based on the price, and I think you hit it spot on this time. You know, so I'm comfortable with 59 unless anybody has objection. Mr. Blink, go ahead, you got a question?
I've noticed that oil prices have been fairly stable lately.
Yeah,
And also, we, you know, a price, $1 per barrel of oil, when we increased and decreased before, it was like $300,000. Now he's telling you it's more like 81,000.
right,
So
so it's not much of a difference.
it's not as much of a difference as it was.
All right, well, no other objection, then we'll keep it at 59?
Okay?
All right,
All right, thank you, Scott.
do you want to do, would you prefer to go right to grants, or you want to start with revenues?
Well, we can go to grants if you want to.
All right.
That's fine with me. I know we have a few,
Yeah, so at this time, I mean, you got, basically, we know where we stand financially. Tommy has gone over the summaries, designations, and oil and gas revenues and royalties. We'll move to grants, as the president stated in his budget message. They cut the funding from the following grant programs, and chime in, please, if I misspeak or whatever. The Care Center, the YMCA, the Council on Aging, the Dave Ant Rec, and 4-H. Those are the 5 programs that you cut the funding from. Anybody else have any other ones that?
The YMCA?
Yes, said it. Yeah, Care, YMCA, Council on Aging, Dave Ant Rec, and then the 4-H, which is also the ag.
And mosquito control, which is not.
Yeah, and then mosquito control, which is not a grant, but it's,
You know, what I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, is that we address the mosquito control issue as a basic public health service, and
There you
it
go.
should be a priority above all grant programs.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
And so somehow we got to figure out how to take care of mosquito control today.
I'm fine with that. All right, what was the total, what's the total cost of mosquito control annually?
mosquito control was, how much you got? It's 800, right over 800,000.
814.
So you need 800,000 to make it run?
Hold on, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is. 816,000. That's to put all positions back in, put all operating budget, all the operating budget back in, the whole thing. 816.
All right, any suggestions, Tommy, where to get that money?
Well, I mean, I could tell you, we could go through each one of these pages like we used to, but I think this, I'm gonna tell you the process, what we did. The department sent in their request. We took the request, I put in all the revenues, we saw where we were off $7 to $8 million. Rochelle went in every one of these departments and cut them back to around what their 2019 budgets were. Now, I'm not gonna say it's exact, because there's some things that we can't cut. There's some things that, there's contracts that we have out. Like for us, we have our audit, our annual audit. I mean, I can't cut that number because it's going to be something, I can say I can't go cut it by 10% because I know what it's going to be. And several other departments are that way, and that's what she really did. So we cut out probably around $2.5 million out of the operating budget. Now, this year, a lot of these departments are running short right now. That's why I was telling you, at the last council meeting, I'm going to have a lot of amendments, not amendments to this, but ordinances, that part of that ordinance, changes to increase some of these budgets, because they're not going to make it to the end of the year. Drainage, for instance, you'll put some money in there for fuel, but that's barely going to get them to the end of the year. So we're going to have to do a review of that again and see who's going to run short.
And since you're going to have to add money to that budget, has it any effect on this budget for the rollover or the unreserved undesignated fund balance moving forward?
Well, it could. It could, depending on what we find. There's a lot of vacancies that we still haven't taken care of in this year. Do you have a number on how much that was roughly
For what? I'm sorry.
for the vacancies for 2019? There's quite a bit of them.
Let me say this about the vacancies. That's going to be a very small number because we used to have a hiring freeze in. We don't have a hiring freeze anymore.
But we did have quite a few positions that were vacant for the year, for the whole year. That's what,
Entire year?
but yeah, 2019. Or for, it might have been for just a few months.
Yeah, how much?
So it's not going to be a whole lot of money. So yes, we may have to take some of the money out of the fund balances to cover the 2019 deficit.
And that'll make the 2020 balance.
Correct. Your
Find some more.
beginning balance is going to decrease. Correct.
Okay.
So, and how much that is, right now?
One more elephant in the room, so to speak, is the intergovernmental service charges from the port. You have that in the budget as $888,000.
2020,
For
correct.
2020 to balance this budget. So
Right.
this body needs to make a decision whether or not we're going to increase that port's budget to cover that deficit, or we got to cut another $888,000 out of this budget, as you presented it today.
And we also have to decide, in 2019, I haven't received anything.
Yes, that's another 700,000 or so that is anticipated, and if we don't get it, then that means the money that you are rolling over into this budget will be 700 and something $1,000 short.
And it used to be where, 500,000 of that is for the firefighters. But since we're transferring to the firefighting fund now for them to balance of $1,525,000, then we're just going to have to change the transfer. If we decide to take that out, then that transfer is going to go up.
And the reason I put these issues on the table, because these will all have to be decided at this table in the next 2 days.
Yes, we have to have answers to those things.
Let me ask you this question, just to clarify,
Yes, sir.
because we worked hard last year, both as at the port budget hearing and the council hearing, and made it very clear to the port that they're going to pay what we said. We all agreed it was 800 and something thousand. Have they paid that for 2019 yet?
No, they have not.
Zero of it. Because I'm getting conflicting stories. I keep getting stories
They
from
have
them.
not. And I sent them invoices. I sent them invoices for the first 2 quarters based on the actual numbers, not based on the budget, but based on the actual numbers of actually what was spent in those departments. As you know, it's a percentage of each one of the departments. I sent them the invoices, and I didn't even hear anything back from them. So I didn't send them the third quarter yet because I didn't have time yet, but that's next.
So we're running behind on 2019, which will affect 2020. And,
Right.
I think everyone knows my position on this issue.
I think we actually all agree on this issue. I mean, we worked, like I said, hard last year to make sure we made it clear that this is the number we agree on, and this is the number they're going to pay. Now, I'm a little remiss that they haven't paid that yet, because I'm getting conflicting stories on that, but that's for another conversation. So I think
We got it. I'm not aware of it.
yeah. All right, so I think getting back to the 816,000 for mosquito control, is there any, Benny brought it up, is there any objection to doing a projected revenue of 300,000 from the bond,
Savings?
the bond savings and put that back in as revenue? And then,
Well, let me say this. From general conversations I've had with several members, I thought the issue today was that we're going to hit the unreserved designated fund balance. And
maybe y'all have a plan, go ahead.
And no, it's not a plan, it's just some discussion that was going to take, and, obviously, everybody has a vested interest sitting in this room. Everybody comes here every year and asks for this money. If it's the will of this council to put all of that money back into the budget for all of these people that are asking for it, then we ought to have that discussion now. We can cut this budget hearing down to a couple of hours, because there's not a whole lot of money here to discuss.
Right.
There's a couple of big issues in the room that need to be addressed. The intergovernmental service charges, the grant agencies that are out there in the audience looking for their restoration budget, and mosquito control, which is obviously our obligation, in my opinion, from the health department standpoint. And I'd encourage anybody to chime in here so we can get some kind of consensus in a public meeting to be able to do this in a fast and furious manner.
That's why I mentioned about the 300,000. Let's start, if we can start there. I think we agree on the 800 somewhat thousand from the port.
Right.
And that's in the budget now. Now, them paying their bill, in 2019, that's an issue that we have to have, and maybe the port chairman can address that at the port committee meeting tomorrow. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had addressed that last week.
Okay,
Something they had to pay up, they hadn't paid the bill based on council resolution ordinance that mandated that.
right.
And they're still hollering, no, we don't owe that, we owe that. I said, yes, you do. It's by law. It's not like the people didn't know it needs to be paid. It's about all legislation that was introduced and passed.
Yeah, and I think
It has been
everybody,
discussed. So I guess the fact is the enforcement
right.
of the legislation need to come in. If that's going to do what it's going to take.
I totally agree.
Well,
And I think we agree on that, Mr.
I talked with Tommy this morning about it, and we could get it from the undesignated, unreserved, and when Thursday, if we pass the industrial taxes,
Impact.
impact fee, we'll be able to pay it back to the fund.
How much money is projected to be generated in?
2.8, 2,
Yeah, you was talking about the emergency fund, so the other fund.
Either one.
Because we only have 175,000 unreserved and designated.
Basically, how much do we need for everybody? For CARE, YMCA, Council on Aging, 4-H, mosquito control?
She's gonna add it up.
David,
If you look at the page that I'm
1.5.
on right now, you see the numbers that we budgeted for 2019. Council on Aging, we budgeted 205,000. Budgeted 145,000 for community programs, which is the care center. 200,000 for YMCA, 50,000 for the ag center.
and 800.
Now, I understand that there have been some grant agencies that have worked their budget and are able to reduce their ask.
4-H.
did you include the,
Yes, the 4-H Ag, for one, has reduced. And I'd like to know if there are any other grant recipients.
Yeah, I'm gonna call them up one by one in a
If
second.
there's any way that they can reduce their ask somewhat to contribute to the deficit that we're.
All right, let's find out where we're at. I'm
wait,
gonna
wait, I had a question.
Go, Mr. Bathala.
I just want to find out all the proposed grants on the table?
Yes, also the Dave, right.
Okay. Now, that, recommend we can do something different with that. Not the whole 50, but 25. I told them that might have to cut it in half. The way our budget is, and hoping everybody else would be able to cut some of their.
All right, this is what I'm gonna do right now. Let's line up. If you come to the podium, we're not gonna have a major discussion yet. Am I on?
625 plus 1860.
Yeah, so
860.
we're not gonna have a major discussion yet on why you need it. Just give us a basic 30-second rundown of how much you're requesting for 2020. So just come on up if you, Mr. Bartholomew is requesting 25 for Davant.
And I would request that if you're asking for an increase, that's very difficult for me to support.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't ask for an increase. So just justify, you don't have to justify it now, just ask what you're asking for 2020.
We're looking, we reduced ours, we're asking for 29.5.
All right, 29,500. All right, thank you.
Who is he?
4-H.
That is 4-H yeah, just announce who you're with. Yeah.
That's for the LSU Ag Center. That's for Sea Grant, for agriculture, and for 4-H.
Repeat the number?
29.5.
All right, thank you. Kara?
Hi, we're asking for the level funding of $145,000, which is actually 65% down from the $405,000 we got in 2014. So we have taken plenty of decreases in the past to try to help the parish.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Olson. Coach?
Bob Becknell from the YMCA. We are respectfully asking for the $200,000 that we received last year, which was down from $250,000 2 years ago. So we're asking to remain at the level of $200,000.
All right, thank you. Is anybody from Council on Aging? Tommy, what did they get last year? 250?
It was right at 200,000. We had $5,000 in there for, what's that, was it electricity or something?
Electricity,
Right.
they
Yeah.
pay for.
So they got 205,000 last year.
All right, so 200 even?
Yeah. His electricity's already budgeted.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, so that's
Mosquito control?
816.
816.
All the grants.
That's all the grants you have.
Add it up with the 25, 29.5 is that? What's the,
Mr.
That's 599, 5,000, right?
we gotta re-add it up.
Yeah, I got 599, 5 for.
Also, wait, what about the lifeguards? For the lifeguard for the pool at Dave Van? I don't know how many people they had on there, because I know we go through this every year in the budget.
Yeah,
That doesn't fall into grants.
That's about 41,000.
Was money that we put up as a grant?
No, it's not.
No, it's not in the grant program, though.
But we got to,
Okay, I'm just saying, all right.
my position on the lifeguards is that it's an obligation of the parish, if you're going to operate the pool, to not let anybody operate the pool but the government, and fund the lifeguard positions. So, Mr. Lapine, is your administration going to operate the pool this year if we fund the lifeguards?
If you fund the lifeguards, we'll operate the pool.
Thank you.
Who's going to operate the pool? That's my question.
The parish will operate the pool, as the parish has done for many, many years, until we decided to farm this out to the fire department, which we are not inclined to do. These are parish employees, part-time employees. They were parish employees last year as well.
Yeah,
But the problem-
the parish maintained it last couple of years. They was responsible for maintaining and operating the pool, Plaquemine Parish government.
So we talking about, I'm on the same page with you, Mr. Roussel, but I want to be clear, because Mr. Bartholomew is asking for 25,000 for the Dave Van Recreation Program, which in the past, that program was managed by the Point Lehigh Volunteer Fire Department. Recreation had nothing to do, the parish's recreation department had nothing to do with the management of the recreation department on East Bank. So I'm in 100% favor of giving it back to the recreation department of the parish and have Mr. Eppley and Director Henry run that program, which would include the lifeguards in the pool. So why would we have to give $25,000 to the?
That's all you talk about, different
That's a separate
aspects.
program in my mind. Right now, we're talking about, last year, the parish paid the lifeguards at the pool.
Yes, sir, the parish paid the lifeguard.
And so we go through.
And year before.
So let's stick to the pool.
Out of the budget, there was a budget for the Dave Van pool. The lifeguards were paid out of that budget for the Dave Van pool.
And
Correct. So-
could we ask the Y to train them for free?
They were training them and actually paying for them at one point in time.
Yeah.
The point I'm making now is that we're going to have to restore the budget for the lifeguards if we plan on operating the pool. And we do this every year. We leave it out of the budget for what reason, I don't know. But it's not, I guess it's like mosquito control. We just put it on the side. But this happens every year. And if we're going to operate the pool, then we need to include it in the budget like every other employee and not get into this mix of fire department versus government run pool. We're either going to operate it as a government pool or we're not. And if we are, then we need to fund the lifeguards and hire them like we did last year, because I remember running around here, everybody was trying to figure out who was going to hire the lifeguard, who was going to certify the lifeguard, and the pool got open late. So I think we need to find a way to make that decision. And if you say we fund the lifeguards, you're going to operate the pool. 41,000 is the number?
Yeah.
41,820, 41,280. We can't get the Dave Van send it back to the Y. It was a lot cheaper than what we're paying now between the grant and the lifeguards. How does that work?
We basically paid $250,000 a year, as Coach Becknell said, and they covered Dave Van,
Right.
Burris, and Port Alpha. So for $250,000, they actually paid for the lifeguards, paid for the programs and staffing, right?
Yes.
So now, yeah, it's costing us a lot more to go on our own as opposed to the YMCA. But I mean, that's Mr. Bartholomew.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He doesn't want to do it. But
The whole problem was, if you want to go back and discuss all this stuff, what really happened, that's another day and another time, but it takes a while to discuss what really took place. And we tried to organize the pool, but the parish had it all along. But when we came on board, every year we was having problems. Could never get the pool cleaned, could never get it in running condition, and anything else. And in 16, that's when Mr. Cormier suggested that we go ahead and try to take it and run it and open it up so the kids can participate. Then we receive an audit with the financial auditor for the parish. That's when she came up and said, you need to give that back to the parish. Let them operate the pool because of the liability that's involved in that. And that's what happened. At that point, it became back to the parish for them to do that. So now, the thing is that first, all we did was ask, the community asked me to ask the Y not to give the kids an opportunity to participate in the Y at no charge because of the hurricane, the BP spill, and the Mardi Gras Pass, which diluted or eliminated a way of life. Kids just didn't have no money. And 100% of the students that go to Phoenix School was at free lunches. So they didn't have any money, and they wouldn't do that. The Y would not do that. They loaded, but they wouldn't let them come in because they don't have any money.
Is this the same issue we have in down at the Y in District 9 or 8? Was it Y at? Did y'all have those same problems?
We got some of the same problems, but it's working, you know. The Y is the center of the District 9 and District 7.
Wasn't
Eight.
District 9 community devastated by a hurricane also, or are you talking about Isaac?
He had two storms. Well,
I clear that up right quickly. They have opportunities in the lower end with the oil industry, the fishing industry, and everything else was never depleted. The East Bank, all that was depleted. So it's a difference. It's not the same. So it's not comparing orange and orange apple to apple. It's totally different when you're trying to use, wait, what I'm just saying, when you're trying to use the analogy, though, to compare different communities to other communities. Now, if we had the same viable opportunity, it would be no problem. No problem at all. And I agree that if we have it, that everybody have to do what they have to do. But if it's not available, then what do we do? Do we deny? Or do we accommodate? That's all. So,
Let's move forward.
I mean, I was waiting for Mr. Lapine to get back on y'all position. I mean, how do y'all, I mean, y'all outrun the operations. Y'all, that's the administration's job.
they already said they're going to operate the pool. What else we waiting on?
We had recreation employees operate the pool last year.
This ain't, I'm not talking about just the pool. This is more than just the pool. This is about the recreation program on the East Bank.
Recreation employees didn't do anything that I'm aware of with the recreation program on the East Bank.
So why don't we just give the recreation program back to recreation and under your supervision, and then we wouldn't have to give a $25,000 grant. We can just put that into recreation.
I don't have a problem with that.
I know it's not a problem. Do you want it? Is that what you, is the rec?
Put into that. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, I don't know why we have a separate line item for a separate section of the parish specifically for recreation, a grant program.
If that's the case, we'll let the recreation take care of all of our recreational program, the whole 9 yards, and be done. Get it over with. Let them take the Y, all the stuff from the Y and everything else. Let them run it. I don't have a problem with that. Not at all. That's a good idea. Give it all to them. There it is. Case closed.
I mean, now you're talking apples and
I got something. I want to comment. I like to comment on that, Mr. Black.
You want to do it?
I like to comment on that. You know, Ms. Trudy, you asked about that situation. That started way back. I remember Dr. Gouy was on the council then. Sitting right there. Hey, how much is it going to cost to go to the Y? $1. $1. Hey, I don't stand up there and lie. Go back and check the records out. I said, that was a good deal. Let it roll that way. But when the deal finally came down, man, people over in the East Bank, they couldn't afford. They got people in Belshire can't afford to go to Belshire YMCA. Nothing against Bob. Me and Bob always gonna be friends. I'm just thinking about people, baby. People. That's why that situation is like it is on the East Bank. People couldn't afford it. you can't afford those prices. You can't afford those prices. You got a pool that built by the parish. Let the people use the facility. Let the youngsters use it. Let them use it. Hey, something costs, and I understand that. But there are reasons why some things are the way they are. You know, and I'm going to be straight up and honest with you. I always for people. I'm always going to be for people. But that's why that situation is over in David. A lot of people couldn't afford to deal with the Y. And I know you got District 7 and you got District 9 with a YMCA deal down there. But I'll guarantee you a lot of them can't afford to go to the pool in Port Selma and Boonville. You know what I'm saying? Hey, let the kids have some type of recreation here. Let them have it. Let them have it.
So, are we moving forward now? We agree that the $41,000 for the lifeguards needs to be restored to the recreation budget. Did y'all come up with an idea on increasing the recreations budget? Instead of being a grant to the fire department, being an increase in the recreation department's budget so they can implement the recreation program?
I have no problem taking $25,000 instead of giving it to the fire department and getting them out of the business completely, because there's no CEA right now anyway, and giving that $25,000 to recreation.
We have the fire department ever running that either. Was the fire department running a recreation program over there?
That's the grant.
No.
I mean, I thought you had people that volunteered to do that. And I don't know that recreation has the manpower to run a recreation summer camp in Davan. We can run the pool with the people that we have over there, but we don't have the manpower to run a recreation summer camp.
Well, I mean, currently as we sit, there's zero funding for any grant. There is, that is appropriated or in the budget, zero funding. There's zero funding for the lifeguards. So whatever y'all want to do, doesn't matter to me.
Well, I want to fund the mosquito control.
Right, that's what we were on, and I suggested the $300,000 to start, to bring it down to $500,000. You had mentioned the $300,000 potential revenue. So if you add that, do an amendment to add that into the budget, and then.
The $300,000 would be actually a decrease in the expenses for the bond payments. I don't know exactly how that's going to all play out, but, I mean, they tell us it's around $300,000, so we can make it work.
But let me ask you this. The only funding that we have, or the bond indebtedness funding that we are going to touch?
We're going to fool with the bond indebtedness.
No, emergency fund.
Emergency fund we're going to touch?
Well, I mean, that's up to you.
How much is an emergency now?
3.1 million.
All right, do an amendment to give everybody what they asked for. Instead of giving Davan anything, give $25,000 to recreation, take $41,000 of that and put it into the lifeguards.
I object to that. You don't discriminate at this table, Councilman Black. Now, if you want to do it, you got to do it globally.
Hey, just discussion.
No, you had a discussion. If you want to do it, you got to do it globally. Because what's happening is a total different entity. Now, if you don't want the kids to have the opportunity, but like been running it all for the last 6 years, say so and get it over with. Then the people know what time of day it is. Stop hiding behind what you want to do. Say it. You don't want people to have recreational program on the east bank of the river because it's being ran by the volunteer fire department, and you don't want to put up the $25,000 to make sure that the kids on the east bank have an opportunity to participate in summer recreation program from May to August. Point blank.
Todd already said he don't have the manpower to do that, so let him have his $25,000, let the volunteers run it, put the $41,000 for the lifeguards.
Let me explain what my issue is. Because I've been up here, this is my 5th year being up here with this. Is that I said it when you took it out 3 years ago. We gave the YMCA $50,000. They ran the pool. They had the lifeguards. They ran everything in Davan, everything, programs, summer camps. The YMCA offered the kids to come to summer camp for $5 a week, right? $5 a week
That's
per
true.
kid. That is 100%
That's true.
true. So I'm not going to sit up here and allow you to continue to tell me I'm hurting the kids
Yes, you are.
when you hurt the kids for $50,000. And every time, it's not $50,000 that the government puts out. It's $41 for lifeguards. It's $50,000 for the grant. It's money here, it's money here, and it all adds up to well over $100-something when we're getting half the services the YMCA provides.
The Y started off with 300,000. Then because we took the 50,000 and they gave them 250,000. And that was just to operate the parish pools. Nothing else.
As a point of order, I'd like to ask that the administration in your budget message said to be very cautious about hitting these funds. What is your position on restoring the grant agencies out of the emergency fund?
I guess as we did this year, we replenish it with the rollover money.
So your position is to take the emergency fund money and fund the grant agencies?
It's not my call, it's your call.
No, Mr. President, we want some leadership here. We want somebody to step up and give us your position. Whether we accept it or not is another story. We will make our decision at this table.
Okay, then you asking me my position?
Yes.
Okay, is it going to make a bearing on whatever you make a decision on?
Mr. President, you are the president.
Exactly. I'm asking you a question. Whatever my recommendation is, you're going to base your decision on that?
I'm going to make my decision on the budget process that I know. What I'm asking for is input. This is your budget. I'm reading your words. Your
Absolutely.
words said be cautious on hitting those designations.
Absolutely.
So I'm asking you to clarify your position on your statement in the
If you want me to
budget.
clarify, okay, you want to take some out the bond indebtedness, some out the emergency, that's fine. That's your call.
We'll do like I said, take it all out of the emergency, and when we pass the impact fee, we put it all back.
Well, that's an option too, Mr. Kongovich. I think that's a good option.
I have a motion for the following amendment to the budget.
I'm sorry, I want to say something.
Motion is to add $145,000 to the care center, $200,000 to the YMCA, $200,000 to the Council on Aging, $25,000 to the Recreation Department, $29,500 to the LSU Ag Center, and $815,000 to mosquito control, or to come out of the emergency fund for a grand total of,
That includes lifeguards or not?
$41,000 for lifeguards
All right, so
to be managed by the Recreation Department.
so there's $1,457,000.
All right, $1,147,000. That's a motion. Do I have a second on an amendment to the budget?
I have an amendment.
You can't amend the amendment.
After you finish, I'm just letting you know.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kognovich. Mr. Surpass.
Let me just make sure, we have amendments for each one of these things, separate amendments. So you're going to vote on these things now, or how you want to do this?
On this one, yeah.
If you're going to vote on them now, then we can pass them out like we always do. If that's.
Question, point of order too, when you finish.
So we have amendments for each one of these things separate. We can pass them out if you want to vote on them now, or if you want to wait on them to the end, we can keep track of them. It's up to you.
All right, well, this is one ordinance right now we're voting on.
One amendment.
That's on the table.
Point,
Like I said, we
Hold
have-
on, Mr. Bartholomew.
I'm just letting you know, before we vote.
We're not
Yeah,
voting. I
you can
got
vote
you.
on-
Because
we can
it's
pass-
not,
I got
it's
you.
not an amendment what you made.
We can pass them out, you can vote on them in global if you want to do that.
Yeah, in Globo.
Okay, let's do that, then we'll pass.
Before you print them,
But then we'll have to redo them all again, you know what I'm saying? Because they're all done already.
all right, before you print them, Mr. Bartholomew,
Yeah, the amendment occurs to the 25,000 to the Recreation Department. Like the amendment that goes to the Volunteer Fire Department for summer recreation program. That's my amendment for that.
yeah, it's going into recreation.
So put the 25 plus. Okay, so you add the 25 to that in recreation. 41 plus the 25.
Right, I added that. I'll put that in there.
Yeah, but that's not saying it's going to people to run it.
But that's for Mr. Eppley and the parish president and Director Henry to manage the program.
No, that's not what, I know that's what you're saying. But it's not being protocol, it's the Volunteer Fire Department to run it, like they've been doing it.
Well, then,
They do an agreement, they can do an agreement.
Yeah, they can have to do agreement up front, like we had before, without no doubt.
well, that's separate from this.
No, he puts it in his budget.
Put it in his budget to support the program. And they do the,
So you want to manage the volunteer fire department now?
it's not for him to manage the department, it's the idea that the CEA determines how the money be spent with the volunteer fire department.
That's after this is done.
No, see, you're trying to put it in recreation fund, it's not
What?
recreation.
Honestly, Mr.
Just
Batali,
take it out,
You know,
and we're gonna come back to it. Nah.
I'm not doing anything.
Right up to CEA now.
Scratch it out. Figure it out, John.
I'll move on it.
Move on it, Benny.
I've been in
I
the
would
queue
like-
for 10 minutes here, y'all.
Hold on, Mr. Belank. Go ahead.
Thank you. Anyway, we have one agency that has given themselves a significant haircut, and the other agencies aren't willing to come off of their full amount at all, even a little bit, to help us out here.
I agree with Mr. Blank. I think someone ought to give up at least 10%.
Or should we just give them what they were operating on last year as well? It's an 8-to-1 return on service, return on investment.
I have a better deal than that. Mine is a 10-to-1 return on investment. With the $145,000 that I am requesting from the parish, that is used as the monetary required match from the parish for numerous grants that we get. So we get better than a 10-to-1 return on investment for the care center. As I said, we have already taken a 65% reduction from the parish when we had $405,000 coming from the parish in 2014. So we do need that $145,000 because we have continuously taken cuts. Last year, we were the only one of the community grants who took a cut. Everybody else stayed at 200, 205. Care Center went down to 145,000. I think the Care Center has done more than their share of taking the cuts and providing numerous services for their parish. We are looked at as one agency, and we're an umbrella agency, but we have a dozen centers under our agency that we run with the decreased funding that is continuously being decreased. But if this $145,000 is taken away as the matching funds, we are truly going to lose a lot more than that. And it's not the care center who's losing, it's you. It's your constituents, it's your family members, it's your parish residents. So that is why we cannot go any lower than the $145,000.
Well, Ms. Olson.
That's it.
Does the
Ms.
school
Olson,
board give anything? Does the school board give anything?
The school board last school year gave us $60,000. For 2020 to date, they have not committed to any funding to the care center. But if you are concerned with the care center using parish money on school children, we can add a restriction when we get to our CEA process saying that none of that $145,000 can be used on any Plaquemines Parish children attending a Plaquemines Parish school, if that solves the question you're
I
asking.
just wanted to know if they give anything.
They did last school year, but they have not committed to anything yet for 2020.
Julia,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
Julia.
Julie. I've got a bit of a personal story. There's a relative of mine who has had some mental health care issues in the past, and you and I both spoke about that. And he's sort of the poster child to receive your services. We had the same discussion last year, and I don't know if there's been any contact with him through the care center, but the only person I know that needs the services that y'all provide the most is somehow slipping through the cracks. And it's hard for me sitting here.
Right, and we have discussed this. So Richie has asked about his uncle and wants the care center to reach out to him to provide services. The care center, as a health provider, has to follow HIPAA regulations. We cannot reach out to an individual client and make the call even to say, if they're over 18, that we have been told that you need services, we would like to schedule that appointment. But, as I told you, if somebody has medical power of attorney over that person with medical power of attorney can call the care center and say, Julie, we need to schedule an appointment for this person. Then we can do it. However, even the person with medical power of attorney cannot make your uncle come if he does not want to come. Only the judge can do that.
1 second, please, Benny. Now, whatever y'all need to be doing behind the scenes to work more closely with the judges or the DA's office or whatever, I would love to see that the funding that this parish provides at the Care Center actually translate to services that are being seen on the ground. Like I said, I only know one person that I feel like needs these services so much. And I'm just, it's not, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like it's getting down to where the real need is.
Have you personally gotten power of attorney for him, medical power of attorney?
We're not
Is that
going to
gonna
discuss this that far deep into that right here, but what I'm saying is I'm not seeing the services on the ground where they're needed the most. Thank you, though.
help? Okay, but we have, just so everyone else will know, through September of 2019, we have provided services to 4,398 people in Plaquemines, and in 2018, we provided services to 6,504. I do invite all of y'all to come meet with me individually, tour the Care Center, find out the services we do and what limitations we are mandated to follow by laws.
Julie,
I'm sorry, who was next?
I also have a family member that recently has gone through some major issues, and it's a younger person that, is school age, and I just would like to go back to that topic. And so $60,000 last year in funds directly to y'all, or was that just to fund a position at the school system?
$60,000 last year was for services provided on a fee-for-service basis in the school system. So Care Center, mental health clinicians go into the school system and provide services we do at least three days of services in every school in the parish by mental health clinicians.
So if the school board did the $60,000 again this year, it would not reduce us by $60,000, correct?
It would not. We are trying to find another funding source for that $60,000 so that I do not lose more matching funds.
Thank you. And thank you for all you do. It does help the residents and even the children that are in our school system.
Thank you. And Richie, truly, I do invite you to come meet with me again.
Certainly.
Mr. Beck now.
I'm going to be real brief. I truly appreciate the position that you're in. I mean, the YMCA, as you know, is a nonprofit, and we're under the same restraints and trying to make ends meet. But as far as the lower end of the parish goes, we take the $200,000 that you subsidize us, and then we match that with right over $250,000. So you get about 130% return on your investment there. The YMCA gets grants. In fact, to make ends meet down there, which it's pretty tough because of all the factors that are involved. Our CEO had received a $100,000 anonymous donation for those facilities down there, which we're using over a 3-year period. So we used $30,000 last year, $30,000 in the budget this year, $30,000 next year to make it meet, and we're still not there. So a reduction in funding from the parish, we would have to look at cutting even more in terms of people and programs and things like that. And I sent you the letter this week with enumerating all the things, and I'm not going to go over all that, but the quality of life certainly is an improvement down there. We're the biggest employer of youth in the parish in that area. We serve so many different needs and purposes, and we are we know how to. We talk with the budget. We know what you're talking about, and we're doing it, and we're cutting, but we have to have your help.
Bob, on your budget down there, the expenditures that the Y pays, that is all salaries?
Salaries and insurance, things like that, just the normal things to run a business.
But the government pays for the utilities and everything in the building, correct?
Yes. Yeah. You own the buildings. We just run the services and the programs out of the buildings.
So that amount of money that you referenced is basically salaries and insurance?
Yes. And overhead and all the different things that cost to make a business. They do belong to the YMCA of Greater New Orleans and in the YUSA. So there are some fees that are involved with that, just to branding and all the things that go along with being part of a YMCA.
And we have a CEA with you now?
Yes, it's going to be, for the new year, we have to do it, but we have it we've had it, yeah.
And in that, you're including free membership for parish employees, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. And a lot of them have taken advantage of
Hear
it.
that. Now, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer the following amendment: restoring mosquito control, $816,000 from the emergency fund.
We got the amendment. I'll pass out the amendment for mosquito control. The way it's going to work with the funding, it's going to come out of unreserved undesignated. The money is decreased to unreserved undesignated, and then, whatever we decide to take out of emergencies or whatever other designation, we could just dump back in to have a.
I thought you said we didn't have an unreserved and designated fund balance enough to cover that.
We don't. We only have 107. What I'm saying is, we have $175,000 in there, but.
Would it be
I don't
more
actually put on
appropriate
the-
to move the total amount into the unreserved undesignated fund balance?
Right, we're going to move that money back
With
into
one
there,
amendment?
because you're not going to want to leave just $175,000 in unreserved and designated anyway. You see what I'm saying? So when we do the ordinance is going to say, let's take out $2 million or $1.8 million from emergencies and transfer it to unreserved and designated.
So can you give us that amendment now so we
Yes,
can
sir.
get this show on the road?
I want to, just because I heard something said twice about, oh, you want to go ahead?
Huh?
You were saying something?
No.
Because I don't want anyone to say that I didn't say anything at this meeting, but the impact fees are going into a special infrastructure designated line item. And so I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that you're going to be able to take impact fees and dump it into the emergency fund. So that's not an option. I just want to make sure everyone here at the table understands that.
We do it for the subdivision fees.
Well, it's my understanding that, I can't go back on all of them, but Mr. Black designated that funding for that road, that turnaround, and I think you can fairly link that needed turnaround to the new subdivision on Woodland Highway. So I think it meets that standard, that definition. But it's got to be used on infrastructure that supports or is benefited by the facility. Otherwise, you would be looking at a tax. And without that clarification or without that point in the ordinance, the impact fee could be challenged as a tax and be overturned by the courts. And so it's important that those fees be used to support and facilitate infrastructure that supports those facilities.
Yeah, so let me clarify, Mr. Karnovich, and I'm actually looking up, trying to find the email now. There is a Supreme Court ruling that says exactly what Mr. Burris just said. So what we did on the Cypress Park subdivision is that all impact fees have to be used in the immediate area that is impacted. We believe that LA 406 infrastructure project, which is a half a mile away, obviously was going to be impacted by that. That's why those impact fees could be moved to that particular project to address that issue that's going to be impacted. Now, give me some time. I'm looking for the Supreme Court ruling on that, but as Mr. Burris said, if we take impact fees and just use them in the general fund for whatever use, I don't think that's legal, and there may be a court challenge, like you said.
Every one of these projects are in that impact fee area. So.
I don't know, that's up to his.
Well, I mean, you can use it for pump stations that affect that, any infrastructure that is affected by the construction of that facility, or any infrastructure that is, supports that facility, you can use. And so any of those pump stations, any of the drainage infrastructure that needs to be done, lighting, road improvements, anything that you can directly tie to that facility, you can use the funds on. But you can't just throw the fund in the emergency balance and say, well, this is going to take care of the balance, and you can't spend it on recreation on the East Bank, you can't spend it on recreation in, it's got to be tied to that facility.
Since Mr. Black used the impact fee for the subdivision, and he said it was his money spent in his district, I could use Burris Levy District that's got 4.5 million, and I'll pay for it.
Well, all I can tell you,
In my district, so I should be able to use it in my district.
I'm not getting into the what
But
district.
Mr. Black, we
I-
set
I'm-
precedents.
I understand what you
I
said.
hold on, Rennie. The precedent that I set was that I'm following the Supreme Court's ruling that every time you do a neighborhood, a subdivision, and after Thursday, if you do industrial complexes, you have to pay impact fees. All I'm saying is that the Supreme Court has ruled, because this case has been challenged, that the funds, say you get, like Mr. Russo said, $1,000 a lot, and you do 100 lots down the street, wherever. That $100,000 is an impact fee. You can't just take that $100,000 and move it 80 miles away, 100 miles away. It has to be used, and this is not Mr. Black's decision, it's the Supreme Court who said that those fees.
It didn't matter where it came from. It
does. That's what it does.
Your exact words was, it was made in my district, I should be able to spend it in my district.
No, that's not what I said.
Yes, it was.
I did.
8 other council members here, they'll tell you.
What I said is the neighborhood is in that
That's
district.
why I changed my vote and re-voted on it.
And the
To give you
impact.
what you wanted. You wanted your money, now I want my money.
And you have to use the impact fee that's collected. Ready?
I'll let you.
Am I right or wrong?
You did it.
The impact fee has to be used.
You did it. Now
All right.
I'm using all royalties from Buras Levy District.
Then use them.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment on the table to include an $816,820 amendment for mosquito control. I offer. Second, right? Oh, I'm not chairman, go ahead.
Offered by Mr. Russo, second by Mr. Gouy. You have it?
Yes, got it.
Any questions, comments from the table? From the audience? All right, this is on $816,000 mosquito control. Machine is open. Passes 9-0. Any other?
I'd like to offer an amendment for the Council on Aging in the amount of $200,000. Second.
Second by Mr. Bartholomew. You have the amendment up? We'll wait for the amendment to get passed out.
I tried. That's why I brought the discussion to the head to where we were getting the money. I tried. Thanks. That's why I'm asking you for backup. All right. Let's get this on the road.
All right, any questions or comments from the table? From the audience? All right, with none, machine is open. Just for the record, this is exactly what I was doing, just in Globo, to get it done at one time. But however, Mr. Russo has this brilliant idea, so let's do line item by line item.
Now, look, let's not get personal here.
I'm not getting personal.
Following the Finance Department's recommendation to distribute the amendment. I'd have shut this thing down a long time ago and we'd have been out of here. If you'd have done it my way.
What's the next one, Mr. Russo?
Wait, Councilmember.
Got to vote on this one
Francis,
first.
It's all, the machine has been open, it's been closed, and it passes 9-0.
we were waiting for two people to vote. And I still don't know. I need the amendment first.
I don't know, what's next, guys?
I'll make an amendment to give the Y $200,000.
All right, Mr. Kognovich has an amendment for $200,000. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. LaFrance. $200,000 from the Y. Any questions or comments from the table? From the audience? Mr. Kognovich offered, Mr. LaFrance seconded. No questions from the table or comments? No questions from the audience or comments? Machine is open. This is $200,000 for the Y. And it passes 9-0. Anything else? Hold on. Mr. Albro? Mr. Albro offers $145,000 for the care center. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bartholomew. 145, Tommy, for the care center. Any questions or comments from the table? From the audience?
It's a good deal, Ms. Olson. You do your homework. The people need mental health care. Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
One of the things, thank y'all for y'all time. I'd like to add, I know things are tight, but also Mr. Blink, and we talked a lot about mental health. One thing that the CARE provides for the community is our Child Advocacy Center. It's a sore subject to talk about when you start talking about sexual abuse of children. But from a law enforcement, I represent in the sheriff's office today. One thing we have a lot of expertise in here at the CARE Center is when we do have a forensic interview. I don't know if you guys realize, but one of the grants that they've got last year and they're trying to renew now is a National Alliance grant, in which we can do our own child advocacy forensic interviews here in parish instead of having, traumatize a victim more by bringing them across the river to do the interviews. So that's something that's been working in place. Obviously, it takes a lot of training. That takes a lot of funding. The ability to do that, again, is of significance to our victims. And I'd just like to add that is a big part of how law enforcement works with the Advocacy Center. And I'd like y'all to take that under consideration.
Mr. Boudreaux, does the Sheriff's Department fund any of their services?
Yes, sir.
How much do you know?
25,000, I think, last year, right, Ms. Olson?
25,000.
Thank y'all.
All right, on the table now is 145 for care, offered by Mr. Albro, second by Mr. Bartholomew. No further questions or comments?
I have a comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Blank.
Yeah, I'm not going to be voting because I have a family member that may be receiving some care from them in the future, hopefully.
Okay. Machine is open. It passes 8-0 with one abstention from District 8.
Recreational program?
All right, Mr. Bartholomew offers $25,000. What is the line item on that? Tommy, you got a specific line item he's talking about? Grants? On which line? What is it called? Okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. LaFrance. Any questions or comments on the $25,000 for Dave Ant? This is outside of recreation. This is for a grant for volunteer fire department.
Yes, it is.
Any questions or comments from the audience? All right, with machine is open on that one. It passes 7-2.
Do you have an amendment for the lifeguards?
All right, Mr. Russo, you want to offer an amendment on lifeguards?
Maybe Mr. Bartholomew might.
Yes,
All right, Mr. Bartholomew offers an amendment for
lifeguard in the recreation department.
lifeguard recreation department, $41,000. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Russo. Any questions or comments from the table? From the audience? All right, with none, machine is open on $41,000 to lifeguards. It passes 8-1. All right, I think we got anybody. All right, Mr. Blank,
Sure. I'd like to go ahead and fund them for the full 50,000.
I wouldn't be so generous if he's accepting 29.5. We're not here to give away money. We're here
there's going to
Point
be a
of order,
reduction of services?
Point of order, Mr. Blank. Mr. Blank has an offer on the table for 50,000. Do I have a second?
29.5 or 50? Which one we doing?
Mr. Blank offered 50.
Wayne, could you please step up for just a second? Will there be a reduction in services if you go down?
Reduction in services. I've already talked to my superiors at LSU, and you'll still get all the same services, and we're going to keep it this way for a while. So, because we know the financial straits, so you will still get a Sea Grant agent, you'll get horticulture agents, the ag agents, and you'll get the 4-H agents for the 29.5.
Wayne, thank you so much for going through your budget and working with us to get that down. We really appreciate it. We'll
Not
go
a
with
problem.
29.5. Is that okay?
Wish we could do more, but that's all as far as we can go right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you as well. All right, so Mr. Blank offers 29,500 for LSU Ag.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kognovich. Any questions, comments from the table? From the audience? All right, with none, machine is open on 29.5 for LSU Ag. It passes 9-0.
I have one more amendment.
Mr. Kognovich?
Add 2 grass cutters for Fort Jackson.
Well, we haven't got the manpower yet. We're doing grants. I mean, we can do it if you want to, but typically, we wait till
Yeah, I
manpower.
mean, we did these grants. I have some other amendments to that different departments asked for. So I mean, if y'all want to just wait on to do those, when we get the manpower, we can do that.
I mean, it's typically what we do. We just
Yeah,
have
we do
grants
that.
now.
I mean, the grants ones, you want to get that out of the way.
Right.
Mosquito control is in here now, and so we can move on with reviewing the budget, and as we do the manpower, we get to that, at the end, we'll give you the amendments for the manpower.
My only concern is that I'm done. We're already at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, how much left can we add to this? How much you got left till it's zero?
Looking right now, if you take, add this up on me, Michelle. 816, 820. 580.
Yeah. Mr. Clepine, you have anything else in here that we can cut? Well, I'm glad to hear you agree with me, Mr. Lepine. Thank you.
So basically what you have right now is you have a negative fund balance of roughly $1,250,000.
All right, then do an amendment to transfer.
Well, we're gonna do that at the end. We're gonna do that in an ordinance.
Well, I'm in agreement with Mr. Russo, and I think the president is as well, is transfer $2 million from emergency fund to unreserved, undesignated, and then call it a wrap.
I mean, we
And we
can
go
do
home
that.
and
I
think
mean,
about it. We'll come back tomorrow morning if we sleep on something and something hits us in the head.
well,
Do y'all want to know the other amendments that we had?
There's no money.
I had some questions about
I mean, no, but I mean.
We'll open up the, if you want to sit here,
Oh, I don't care.
I have
I'm
to
ready.
agree. I would have voted differently on some of those, knowing that I didn't know there was more. You know, I mean, but there's no more money. We'd have to go
Well,
back
there's a few more positions. I can bring them up and just tell y'all what was asked for. You know, want me to do that?
That's asked for from what cut?
Well,
Do they want to do?
I mean, how many cuts did you do before you got to that cut?
well, these did not come from any cuts. This is just departments asked for these
I
things.
know,
and
but
we
I
wrote the
mean,
amendment.
did you have departments ask for this and then you refined it and gave us the budget?
No, I mean, the numbers I gave you at the beginning is where we started at. We did the grants now. We did the grants. And so we have to figure out where we're going to fund that from. Y'all say you want to take it from emergencies, that's fine. We could take $2 million from there. Now,
that would leave you at $500,000 in unreserved,
that will
undesignated.
leave you around $500,000.
Then we'll figure out what we're going to do with the emergency fund, if we have to replenish it from the rollover or from whatever else. That's fine. But I mean, I personally cannot vote to spend any more money.
And it's up to y'all. Whatever y'all want to do, you know, it's fine. I mean, I don't know if y'all want to go through the rest, go look at capital projects, at least look at them and see what's out there. Look at what's in manpower, look at the vacancies. I'm not saying to spend any money, but I think for the new council members, we at least should do that, you know, to at least let them know where we stand with projects and things like that. It's up to y'all, though. I mean,
We have one for firefighting, though, in the firefighting department. They thought somebody was going to quit, and they wanted to unfund that position. Now, the lady doesn't want to, so we need to refund that position for 2020.
it's going to come from the unreserved, from the fund balance for firefighting.
For firefighting.
They do, even though we're transferring money to them, they still have a fund balance.
How many amendments you have?
That's it. That's all.
No, how many amendments total you
Other
have?
ones? It's not that many. There's one for the corner. That was that Dr. Gui had asked before.
Do you mind just go through them each? Just tell us what they are.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you. There's not many.
All right.
Um,
So the
There's-
corner that Mr. Gui asked for,
the one for Mr. Kongovich for the 2 grass cutters at Fort Jackson. That's 81,000. Civil Service requested a position, 49,007. That's it.
And the firefighting one.
And the firefighting one we just mentioned to you. That's not going to affect.
Oh, permits, a building inspector.
And a building inspector for permits, 53,720.
I support that for sure. I get so many complaints about building inspectors that, are y'all gonna have one?
We're working with one close to retiring.
I think that those building inspectors, though, can come out of the impact fee. Would that be legal?
I would not take it out the impact.
No? So let's get the ground rules here. No continuing operational expenses should be taken from an impact fee. Do we agree? Is that what we agree on? Capital improvement impact projects only?
I'm not saying that it cannot be used for any operations whatsoever, but it's to go into the infrastructure. The law is pretty clear. There needs to be a direct, what we call in the law, nexus to the facility of the project. So to fund a general building inspector out of that fund would make me very nervous.
Well, that's the closest I can think to of a nexus to a project is an inspector. And if we don't have that nexus, then you got to get down to the water pump in Ravina Road and those type of projects, which will be capital improvements. And I just want to see if we can get to a ground level agreement that we're not going to spend impact funds on operational, continuing, recurring expenses. If that's what we're going to do, then fine.
Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. I can only tell you what the courts have generally said, and there has to be a serious direct nexus, and typically it is infrastructure. It's called an infrastructure designation. Otherwise, if there isn't that direct nexus, it's viewed as a tax, not a fee, and therefore the whole thing would be null and void.
But you don't see a nexus between an inspector and inspecting that plant.
I'm not saying I don't see any nexus. I'm saying I don't. On these areas, especially when you're talking about fees versus taxes, I like to view the law a little conservatively, and so I would prefer a closer nexus.
Closer than an inspector inspecting them.
You're funding a.
No, I'm talking about on operational recurring expense, closer than an inspector inspecting them.
That is one facility in the entire government where a building inspector will likely spend 99.99% of his time inspecting other facilities, other buildings, and not that facility. And so therefore to use the entire amount to fund one building inspector who's probably 99% of the time going to use his time somewhere else, to me, I think there are other things that we need and will likely need, and I would be more comfortable funding those items as opposed to that item.
And could you give me some examples?
Sure. Anything related to drainage?
What about operational recurring expenses?
Yeah, I think any operation expenses that would be like ditch digging, it would be culverts, it would be grass, maybe grass cutting on that area, it would be any of those types of services that affect that area, I would be okay with.
Right. But we have always adopted the policy that we don't go inside the fence line, and in this case, we don't go inside the sheet pile wall. So that would have to be outside of the sheet pile wall.
It's generally, I guess I'm not quite following you. You mean going in their actual facility and doing work?
You're talking about cutting grass and digging drainage ditches and all.
I don't mean their grass. I mean any of our infrastructure that they benefit from. So they're going to benefit from our drainage. They're going to benefit from our levee system. They're going to benefit from our highways. They're going to benefit from our water program, our water plants. Those are infrastructures that we know directly benefit VG. in any other facility. So those are the types of improvements that I think these funds need to be used for.
So we can pay for pump station operators?
I would like to do a little more research on that. I will tell you that the law that I've read, typically this should be used for infrastructure, not operational expenses.
That's my answer. Thank you so much. I've been asking you that. Do we have any?
Well, I'm not saying that
current expenses and.
Well, what I'm saying is that's generally what the law says. What I've been trying to convey is that I think we need to be conservative on this. I will do the research to see if you could use it on a reoccurring operations. But what I'm telling you is so far everything that I've read, I would not be comfortable spending it on that when there are so many other actual infrastructure needs that the money could be spent on.
Look, I'm all for not spending on recurring expenses. I just want to be clear on that. I wanted to see if you were clear so we could have that understanding that it's not going to be spent on recurring expenses and it'll be on capital infrastructure projects. And I agree with that 100%, and I'm hoping that that's where we stay.
Well, as you know, the administration can't spend that money unless the council appropriates it out of the infrastructure budget. And if at the next appropriation, you will, whatever the item is, you want to ask my recommendation, I'll certainly provide it. And it should be spent on infrastructure that directly is affected by or benefits the facility.
Does the administration take the position that on manpower additions, would you rather go into next year and go case by case based on the needs?
Yes, that would be a good idea. I don't recommend any of these amendments.
Okay. I mean, with that said, does anybody have any? Mr. Blank, I'm sorry, you're in the queue.
Thank you very much. I just
I'm off the screen, sorry.
tie in why it's important for people to pay their taxes from day one. This one particular facility that we're discussing would be paying about $88 million a year in taxes to go to the local sheriff's department, our parish government, the assessor, the hospital district, the school board. All those entities are only bringing in $68 million a year right now. We're squabbling over $2.8 million for this impact fee, and they got a free ride for 10 years. Now, future facilities, this body gets to decide whether they're going to be tax exempt, 80% tax exempt for the first 10 years or not. I just want to loop all this in as we're having these really tough decisions and discussions. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Gooey.
I may have missed it. We discussed vacancies that have been vacant in 2019. Are those funded positions in 2020? Vacancies from 2019 that...
No.
No.
The vacancies I'm talking about for 2019 are positions that were vacant. And I'm not talking about taking the positions out. I'm just taking the money that wasn't spent in 2019 for that period of time it was vacant and using that money to cover some of these things in 2019. Not taking the positions out.
Got you.
Now, there are some positions that were vacant, some vacancies we are proposing to take out of this budget.
Okay.
And if y'all want to go through those, we can. If not, but there are some vacancies that were offered up by the administration that we did take out to help us balance the budget for 2020.
Gotcha.
One question I had, are we adding a legislative liaison in this budget?
Yes, we did.
And who is that?
We have nobody in mind. We just added it to the budget line
And for what purpose?
for a legislative liaison in Baton Rouge.
And will this be a registered lobbyist or a liaison?
It would be a decision of y'all's. I asked to put that in that. I asked Mr. Surpass to put that in so we can get a registered lobbyist.
So you're talking about a registered lobbyist. We had one last year. It was Danny Garrett. And the year before last, we bumped him out of the budget. And so you're going to recommend that we actually hire a lobbyist, because in the past when we had liaisons, they are not really of any use.
I agree with you.
And there's something that you think that we need to spend that $60,000 on?
That's something, if y'all want to use it for amendment of, I think we should.
I I'll chime in. I tend to agree. This is the first I've seen it, but I tell you what, I mean, we lost out on $700 million in 578, and however much was in the surplus, $5 billion. I mean, so, I mean, I think when we do interviews or whatever we do to hire somebody,
Well,
it's an issue because evidently we didn't get
yeah, I
what
agree.
we deserved.
I always thought that that was our Senate and Representatives' responsibility to represent us up there. And, you know, that's what they get elected to do.
Mr. Burris, I found that the case law is 133 Supreme Court 2586 Supreme Court of the United States, Coy Coons versus the St. John River Water Management District. So I'm sure you have a copy of that, but that's basically the email I've been looking for.
Are there any other professional services that y'all have added to the budget besides the one I found there?
Any additional professional?
No, I'm sorry.
Any additional?
No, that's the only one.
The only one I could find. So, all right.
I have a question.
Ms. Newberry?
On Department 533, interim employee training, that went up 812%. Can someone explain that to me? It went from 10,000 budget this year to 91,000.
What is that in?
You know, we get
Page 39.
While we're looking for that, I want to just correct the record that the impact fee is actually $2,000 per lot. Rennie just sent me some information, and they've done that phase, Cypress Park across the street, in 2 phases. So they've only paid half of the impact fees that are due, and the other half will be coming due, I guess, this year. So to me, it looks like we have probably about $150, maybe $200,000 of impact fees that are coming to us that are not in the budget.
It's 120, whatever the difference is.
But again, that goes to infrastructure, right?
Depends who you talk to.
I'll email you the Supreme Court case, and then you can distribute it to the council, unless you have it already.
Sure. Yeah. You mean now?
You just said depending who you talk to. If it's the Supreme Court who you're talking to, they have a ruling. So I'll email you the case, and you can send it out to everybody for clarification. And maybe Danny can weigh in on his interpretation of the.
But we wouldn't budget for that. I mean, I think that's too speculative to put in as a revenue. You agree, Tommy? The second proposed phase of Cypress Park, that's a revenue that I don't think we'd be comfortable putting in.
Well, that's what I got from when I asked about this. I mean, I asked
we can-
specifically if we could put any of this stuff in and
Right. The only
didn't
reason
feel comfortable.
The reason I bring it up, because it's already been approved by us, and he's back there rolling pretty good.
I mean, it's got to be completed, from what I understand, it's got to be completed before we get the impact fees. And I mean, I don't know if you weren't sure about
First
that or
phase,
not.
though, I think you all just approved that fee. Yeah, I don't think you.
No, we approved
The whole sub?
We
Okay.
approved 120. It is one phase.
So when the final
We
phase
approved
is
120.
done,
He
correct.
did half of the first phase, and he paid for the impact fees for half of the first, which is 60. And they're going to complete the next 60 whenever. I don't know when. Who knows? It could be 2020. It could be 2021. It depends, I guess, on what he sells. I mean, but like I said, those impact fees, you can't just jam them in the general fund. Do you need,
Did y'all find that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. I believe we had put a portion of money in here because you're going to have, from what we understand, several people retiring over the next year or so. And this was in case they had to hire anybody to train with them ahead of time. We just put some money in there. If you want to remove it, we can. It was kind of like what y'all did with the drainage superintendent this year, where y'all had to go and do a separate ordinance. If y'all want to do that every time, y'all can.
So that's for retirees?
No, when you have a superintendent or
Okay, for-
somebody retiring,
To train.
we can hire somebody in this department to train with them.
They gotta be working the same time. We can't get rid of that position.
How do y'all see that for this coming year? Because it wasn't in the budget this year. So y'all added a significant amount, so I guess
I also think some of this was due to the ordinance that y'all adopted at one of the last council meetings. We had to increase the budget in interim, and I think it's kind of crossing also. It got put into 2020 and 2019 for that position.
So this will help the budget?
Yeah.
Here, if we hit that position again, okay.
All right, do you need motion on the movement of the $2 million from emergency fund to?
This is the way I had envisioned it to happen. After we go through, we do all the amendments and things like that, then I was.
Not saying about, don't mention amendments.
You're finished, okay.
I'm saying if I decide, me personally, that, look, I'm done,
Right.
and I want to do a motion for, you need an ordinance?
No, it's going to be on the ordinance. We're going to have to pass this ordinance at the council meeting. That's why we want to do a special council
I'm
meeting.
talking about transferring.
That's right. It's going to be on the ordinance.
We don't need to do it today.
No, it needs to be on the, well, we was asking to do a special council meeting right after this is over with, but I don't know if we could do it today,
Tomorrow, you got to do it tomorrow.
So we can come back tomorrow and have your ordinance, because we have to do 3 ordinances. We have to one for budget control, we have to do the one for operating, and one for capital. So if you accept those ordinances, then you accept this book the way it is with the amendments that we just did.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn at this time. I'm sorry, you're right. I have a motion to recess at this time, come back tomorrow and convene the special council meeting directly after the port meeting and vote on the 3 ordinances from finance. That's it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, you think it would have just recess and then tomorrow we can adjourn the budget hearings? I mean, in case you have something else that we didn't, or something we had that we didn't.
Let's recess today.
Okay.
We'll reconvene tomorrow. Does anybody have an objection to 11 o'clock?
We advertised for 9:30.
Doesn't matter. No, we didn't.
It just said the tomorrow, okay.
Does anybody have an objection to 11 a.m.? All right. A motion to recess today, reconvene at 11 a.m. tomorrow for the budget hearings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Kidovich. Any questions or comments from the table? From the audience? Machine is open. It's 9-0. With that, the budget hearing is recessed at 4 p.m. Thank you.